The huge yellow bulldozer was already halfway through my ranch fence when my drone camera caught it. The machine roared like a beast as it crushed my wooden gate, sending splinters flying into the air. The driver, wearing a hard hat and a vest with an HOA badge, didn't even hesitate. He pushed forward like he had every right in the world. Behind him, 3 other HOA workers were setting up orange cones and taping off the land with bright yellow ribbon that said property violation. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was over 500 miles away visiting my sick aunt. But thanks to the drone I had launched remotely from my phone, I saw it all. They were trying to bulldoze my ranch. My ranch. Just a week earlier, the HOA had sent me a letter claiming my fence was too high, my barn not in compliance, and my horses a nuisance to the neighborhood aesthetic. I didn't take it seriously. This land had been in my family for 3 generations. It wasn't even supposed to be under HOA control. Or so I thought. I zoomed in with the drone. One of the workers yelled, "Make sure the barn comes down today." Another replied, "That's what Karen said. He's out of town, won't be back till Monday. Let's clear it all before he shows up." Karen, HOA president. The same woman who gave me a fake smile every time she walked past my gate. The same one who once asked if I would consider donating my back pasture to the HOA for a park project. My hands shook as I recorded everything. The cows were spooked, running wildly across the land. My dog Max barked non-stop from the porch, chained safely away from the chaos but terrified. The barn doors rattled as the bulldozer turned and drove straight toward them. Then the feed froze. The drone lost connection. I stood there, phone in hand, breathing hard. I had no idea how much damage they'd do before I could get back. But one thing was clear. This wasn't a mistake. This was war. 3 weeks before that awful day, everything had been quiet. I had just fixed the front fence and painted the barn a deep red. I even installed solar panels on the roof to power the place without relying on the grid. My ranch was peaceful, quiet, and self-sufficient. That's how I liked it. It all started when Karen, the HOA president, knocked on my door. She wore her usual pearls, sunglasses, and that stiff smile that looked like she practiced it in a mirror. "Hi," she said sweetly. "We've noticed your fence is above regulation height. And there's been talk at the last meeting about your property being a bit rugged." I looked at her, confused. "It's a ranch, Karen. It's supposed to be rugged." She laughed like I told a joke. "Well, the HOA is considering redeveloping some of the land around here. You're right in the middle of that plan. You might want to think about selling before things get complicated." I told her flat out, not interested. She gave a quick nod and walked off, her heels crunching over the gravel. That same night, I got a notice on my door. A violation warning. My fence, my barn color, even the type of grass I used in my pasture was on the list. It was ridiculous. I called a lawyer the next morning. He checked the land records and confirmed what I suspected: my ranch wasn't officially under HOA authority. But here's the tricky part. Years ago, a zoning error had left the ranch technically inside the HOA map. A mistake, but one that the HOA could try to use if I didn't fight back. I thought the notices would stop once I made that clear. But instead, they doubled down. One day, a neighbor told me HOA workers were seen measuring the land. Another said Karen had mentioned a plan to beautify the community by eliminating eyesores. I laughed it off, but I shouldn't have. Then came the sneaky stuff, a fake letter from the county saying I owed back taxes. A tow truck that tried to remove my truck for being parked improperly. Random strangers walking near my back property line, pretending to be joggers. I installed cameras, upgraded the gate, and even got a dog, Max, for good measure. I didn't know it would go this far. A week before the bulldozer incident, I had to leave town to take care of my aunt. I asked my neighbor, Jason, to keep an eye on the ranch. But Jason worked nights, and Karen must have known. That's when they made their move. At exactly 11:43 a.m. on a Friday, my drone captured the HOA trucks rolling in. 4 men jumped out. One had a clipboard. Another had a chainsaw. They didn't even knock. They just started taping off my land. And just when I thought they couldn't get bolder, the bulldozer fired up. But I had proof. Video. Names. Faces. What I didn't have was time. Because just before the drone feed cut off, I saw something I'll never forget. One of the HOA men walked into my barn with a gas can in his hand. I couldn't sleep that night. The last thing I saw before the drone feed cut off was the man with the gas can stepping into my barn. That barn had been built by my grandfather, plank by plank. It held saddles, old tools, even a few heirlooms from my parents' time. If they burned it, they wouldn't just be destroying wood, they'd be erasing generations of my family's history. I tried calling the sheriff's department in town, but the deputy said he couldn't act without being physically present to verify a crime. He suggested I call animal control for my livestock if I was worried. Animal control? These people were trespassing and possibly planning arson. But since it was the HOA, everyone assumed it was just a misunderstanding. I knew better. So I booked the first flight back. It wasn't easy. Delayed flights, missed connections, everything seemed to slow me down. But by dawn the next day, I was speeding down the dusty road back to my ranch, phone in one hand, heart in my throat. As I got closer, I saw smoke rising in the distance. No, 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 I whispered, pressing the gas pedal harder. But when I pulled up, I was shocked. The barn was still standing barely. Someone had lit a fire near the back of the structure. The flames had scorched one corner and black smoke stains ran up the walls, but thankfully it hadn't caught fully. Max barked wildly as I ran to him and unchained him. His tail wagged like crazy and I could tell he was shaken but okay. The cows were gone, likely herded away by whoever came. The land was a mess, trampled dirt, broken fence rails, tire tracks from the bulldozer. And parked right in the middle of my land like it belonged there was Karen's silver SUV. She was standing next to it, arms crossed, sunglasses on, acting like she didn't just try to destroy my home. "Oh, you're back," she said, like I was interrupting a meeting. "What the hell did you do to my ranch?" I snapped. "We were enforcing HOA compliance. We left multiple notices and you refused to cooperate. The board approved emergency intervention." "Emergency? I've been gone 3 days. You brought a bulldozer. You lit a fire." She gave a tight smile. "The fire was unfortunate. Maybe one of your animals knocked something over. You're insane." She shrugged. "The board agrees this property is unsuitable for the neighborhood plan. We've already filed for reassignment of use. You'll be hearing from our lawyers." My hands curled into fists. "You just admitted trespassing, destruction of property, and attempted arson. I have drone footage of everything. Every face, every badge, every word." Her smile faltered just slightly. "Also," I said, stepping closer, "you didn't do your homework. This land? I lease it to the county judge for his private horse sanctuary. He's part owner. So technically, you just bulldozed his fence too." She froze. Now it was my turn to smile. "And guess who just called me on the drive here? Judge Randall. He's very interested in hearing how you handled things while I was gone." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Just then, 2 sheriff cars pulled up at the gate. Lights flashing. Someone must have reported the smoke. "Good," I muttered. "Let's have a nice long chat with the law." Karen turned pale. The deputies stepped out and I waved them over. I explained everything, the drone footage, the trespassing, the fire, the destruction. Karen tried to spin her usual lies, but her voice wavered more with every word. When I showed them the video from the drone, they took it seriously. One deputy said this could be felony property damage and unlawful entry, possibly attempted arson. Karen was escorted to her SUV to answer further questions downtown. But I knew this wasn't over. The rest of the board would come next. Karen wasn't working alone. Someone had approved this. Someone had signed off on bringing a bulldozer onto my land. So I called my lawyer again. "We're going to file for a protective injunction against the HOA," I told him. "And then we sue every last one of them for damages." He whistled. "You've got evidence?" "Plenty. And a very angry judge on my side." I stood in the middle of the wrecked ranch and looked around. My land had been violated. My legacy had almost gone up in flames. But I wasn't backing down. I was going to make the HOA wish they never stepped foot on my dirt. 3 days after Karen was taken in for questioning, the entire neighborhood buzzed like a kicked beehive. HOA board members were calling emergency meetings. Flyers with HOA transparency now showed up on every mailbox. And I was getting calls from neighbors who never even used to wave at me. But I didn't care about the gossip. I cared about justice. The sheriff's department officially launched an investigation into unauthorized HOA activity, and Judge Randall, the man I had quietly leased part of my ranch to for his horse sanctuary, personally sent a letter to the HOA's legal team. His words were short and sharp. Any further action on the property in question will be considered a breach of civil code and subject to criminal charges. You are hereby instructed to cease and desist all enforcement until the matter is resolved in court. I had the letter framed and hung on my living room wall. But the damage wasn't over. One afternoon, just as I was trying to patch up the barn's burned corner, a man in a suit walked onto my land. No car, no introduction, just strutted up like he owned the place. "I'm Gregory Cole," he said, attorney for the Willow Hills Homeowners Association. I leaned on my shovel. "Congratulations. You're the first lawyer I've ever wanted to punch." He didn't flinch. "My client informs me there may be a misunderstanding. She was acting on behalf of the board. Your client brought a bulldozer to my property. There was a clerical error in property zoning records." "No," I interrupted, pulling out a thick folder. "You mean this zoning report? The one that proves my land was exempt from HOA oversight and misfiled 15 years ago." He adjusted his tie. "Let me make something clear," I continued. "I'm suing the HOA for illegal entry, destruction of property, animal endangerment, attempted arson, harassment, and fraud. And when I'm done, you'll be representing a board that no longer exists." He looked around at the scorched barn, at the partially rebuilt fence, at the drone perched quietly on the porch rail. "I see," he said. "We'll be in touch." He turned and left. The next morning, I filed the lawsuit, and the news hit fast. Local rancher sues HOA for bulldozer attack. Judge involved. HOA president under fire for illegal trespassing. Drone footage exposes HOA overreach. The headlines spread like wildfire. Reporters started showing up at the gate. One of them, a woman from Channel 7, asked to do an interview. I agreed. The segment aired that same evening. Clips of the drone footage, pictures of Karen smirking at my gate, audio of the HOA workers talking about clearing it all before he comes back. And of course, my warning to the camera. If you think owning land means you're safe from HOA abuse, think again. They came for my ranch while I was gone. But they messed with the wrong man. The support rolled in. People from all over the country, Texas, Montana, Arizona. Folks with ranches, farms, even city folks tired of HOA madness sent emails, donations, and messages like, "You're standing up for all of us. My HOA tried to fine me for planting tomatoes. We need more people like you. Sue them into the ground." But then something strange happened. Late one night, as I sat outside sipping coffee under the stars, Max started growling. Not barking. Just a low, steady growl from deep in his chest. I stood up and scanned the trees. That's when I saw a flashlight flicker and vanish. I grabbed my phone and opened the drone controls. Within seconds, it was in the air, sweeping across the property. Nothing. Until I replayed the footage. A shadow. Behind the barn. Someone had been watching. And they weren't from the news. I called the sheriff again. They promised to send a patrol car through the night. But I already knew someone from the HOA wasn't ready to back down. This wasn't just about power or fences anymore. This was about revenge. The patrol car didn't come. Or if it did, it didn't stay long enough to make a difference. The next morning, I found deep boot prints behind the barn, exactly where I'd seen the shadow in the drone footage. Whoever it was had stood there for a while, watching. I tightened security. Installed motion-activated floodlights on every corner of the barn, upgraded my front gate with an electric lock, and programmed my drone for automatic nightly patrols. Max wouldn't leave my side anymore. Wherever I went, he followed. His instincts were sharp, and I trusted them more than the local deputies at this point. That evening, I got a call from Jason, my neighbor and old friend. "Hey," he said. "You might want to know. Karen's out on bail." I clenched the phone tighter. "Already?" "Yep. And she's been meeting with the rest of the HOA board behind closed doors. Folks are saying she's trying to pin everything on one of the workers' claim she didn't approve the bulldozer, the fire, any of it." "Of course she is. But here's the real kicker," Jason added. She's talking about a counter lawsuit. Says you're the one trespassing. That the ranch paperwork is fake. She's claiming fraud. I laughed bitterly. Unbelievable. She's got money. And friends in high places. Yeah? I said. So do I. Judge Randall isn't just my tenant. He's my godfather. Jason whistled low. Well, she clearly picked the wrong ranch. I ended the call and stared out at the land. My grandfather had cleared these fields with his bare hands. My father taught me how to ride my first horse out there by the stream. This wasn't just property. It was legacy. Blood, sweat, and soul. And Karen wanted to erase it with a bulldozer and a lie. That night, the drone picked up something strange again. At 3:12 a.m., it caught the glint of a metal object near the northeast fence line. I zoomed in. A hidden trail camera. Brand new. Nestled between two cactus plants and aimed directly at my barn. They were spying on me. And they wanted to catch me doing something wrong. But I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. Instead, I played my own game. I called a friend from the city, someone who owed me a favor. He used to be a private investigator. Now he ran a tech firm that specialized in surveillance and counter-surveillance. By sunrise the next day, he arrived with equipment, signal jammers, infrared sensors, encrypted trail cams of our own, and a mobile unit that tracked nearby transmissions. Within hours, we uncovered 3 more hidden cameras, 2 audio recorders buried near the barn, and 1 tiny GPS tracker under my truck. They weren't just watching. They were building a case. I turned to my friend. Can you trace the signals? He nodded. I already did. All of them lead back to one source, HOA headquarters. I shook my head. Karen's really digging her own grave. He chuckled. Well, let's give her a shovel. The next part of the plan required patience. We staged a scene, a loud arguing between me and Jason about illegally selling horses and hiding new construction. We made sure to have it within earshot of the bugged area. Jason even wore a fake sheriff's badge just to stir up suspicion. Within 48 hours, I got a letter from the HOA. We have been informed of unapproved commercial activity and unlicensed structures on your property. Failure to respond within 24 hours will result in formal board action. They took the bait. I sent the letter directly to my lawyer and Judge Randall. Along with the surveillance footage, the GPS logs, the trail cam evidence. That same day, Judge Randall called an emergency hearing. Karen was summoned. So were 2 other HOA board members. The courtroom was packed. Reporters. Locals. Former HOA victims. I sat calmly while the evidence was presented. Drone footage of the bulldozer. Audio of HOA workers referencing Karen. Video of the man with the gas can. Signal tracking from hidden devices. GPS logs. The fake violation notices. Karen's own voice on tape discussing getting him out before he returns. Karen looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. And then the judge dropped the final blow. The plaintiff, Mr. Parker, is hereby granted a restraining order against the Willow Hills Homeowners Association and all current board members. Further, the court recognizes the abuse of power, unlawful surveillance, and targeted harassment as grounds for immediate civil action. A formal trial will proceed. The crowd erupted. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Karen was humiliated, but far from done. I could see it in her eyes as she left the courtroom, whispering something to her lawyer. She wasn't going to stop. And neither was I. Because now the whole country was watching. The day after the courtroom hearing, I woke up to 22 new voicemails and over 100 messages. My story had gone viral. A short clip of me in court, where I calmly stated, I don't care if it's the HOA, the FBI, or a pack of wild coyotes. Nobody bulldozes my ranch and gets away with it. Had exploded on TikTok and Instagram. People were calling me the ranch defender. Some even sent in designs for t-shirts with phrases like, Green circle, don't mess with ranchers. Red circle, HOA Karen versus the cowboy. Green circle, my land. My rules. A YouTuber even made a 15-minute video called HOA thought they could steal this man's ranch. Until they saw who he leased it to. It racked up over 2 million views in just a day. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because 2 days later, I got a letter taped to my gate, not mailed, not emailed, taped. It was anonymous. Typed. No name. No signature. Back off. Sell the ranch. You won't survive the next fire. I stood there, the letter fluttering in the morning wind, my heart pounding. This wasn't just a power trip anymore. This was personal. And they were willing to escalate. I called the sheriff again, but they chalked it up to a prank. Could be some angry HOA supporter, they said. Unless they take action, there's nothing we can do. But I knew better. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch with Max beside me, shotgun loaded, the drone circling overhead every 30 minutes. I wasn't going to be run off my land by cowards hiding behind threats. The next day, I took the fight up a notch. With the help of Judge Randall, I filed a federal lawsuit not just against the HOA, but against the developer who originally drafted the corrupt HOA charter that allowed this mess. We argued that the HOA had been abusing emergency override clauses to target certain properties, mine included, and had used falsified documents to claim oversight over land never zoned for them. The media caught on quick. The headlines were bold. Fire, HOA lawsuit goes federal, rancher exposes corruption ring. Fire, leaked emails show HOA targeted families for their land. Yes, you read that right. Leaked emails. Jason, my neighbor, had a cousin who worked as an IT contractor for the HOA years ago. He still had access to backup servers. What he found? Chilling. A spreadsheet. Names of problem owners. Columns labeled. Remove by end of year. Apply fine pressure. Initiate bulldoze if non-compliant. And guess what was written next to my name? New owner expected, future development property. Eliminate livestock appeal. They were trying to force me out to sell my ranch so they could develop it. But the best part? The spreadsheet showed that Karen was receiving monthly consulting fees from the same developer that was eyeing my land. Now the judge had everything he needed. An emergency injunction was issued. No HOA board member could enter or contact me. All HOA operations were suspended pending a full audit. Karen was placed under investigation for conspiracy and bribery. The sheriff finally stepped up, sending deputies to patrol the property daily. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But just when I thought the worst was behind me. One night, around 11:47 p.m., my drone picked up a vehicle pulling into the edge of my ranch, headlights off. It parked near the backfield. Then another car pulled up beside it. Then a third. Max growled, low and steady. I launched the drone and activated the spotlight. There, in the beam, were 4 men dressed in black hoodies. One of them carried a metal can. Another had what looked like a pry bar. They scattered when the light hit them, running in different directions, jumping back into their cars. But not before the drone camera caught their license plates. Every single one of them traced back to HOA board members' relatives. I handed the footage to the sheriff the next morning. They didn't hesitate this time. Warrants were issued. Arrests were made. Karen's name was all over the coordination. She was finally arrested again, this time for conspiracy to commit arson and attempted property sabotage. As the cruiser drove her away, I stood on my porch, arms crossed. Max barked once. I nodded. Yeah, buddy. We're winning. But the war wasn't over. Next came the federal courtroom. The class action lawsuits. The full destruction of the corrupt HOA system that had tried to bury me. I wasn't just defending my land anymore. I was leading a rebellion. It was like dominoes falling in slow motion. After Karen's second arrest, the rest of the Willow Hills HOA board scrambled like rats from a burning barn. The treasurer, Paul Henderson, resigned within 24 hours and fled the state. The secretary, Dana Mills, deleted her social media and claimed medical leave. And the vice president, Carl Winters, held a press conference trying to blame everything on Karen, saying, "We were manipulated. She acted alone." But the emails said otherwise. Judge Randall released an excerpt from the leaked server showing Carl approving budgets for property cleanup teams, a coded phrase they used for demolition attempts. Dana had signed off on legal threats. Paul was the one who updated the fake zoning documents. They were all in it. The feds came in next. Investigators from the Department of Housing and Urban Development arrived with laptops, boxes, and scanners. They set up shop in the HOA clubhouse, which now had yellow caution tape across the front door. They found enough to launch a RICO case, the kind usually used for criminal enterprises. Apparently, this wasn't the only HOA they'd corrupted. Karen and her co-conspirators had been working with developers across 3 other neighborhoods using fake violations, forged fines, and aggressive enforcement to push long-term residents off their land just to make space for new development deals. And I'd just blown it all wide open. The media called it the ranch case that shook the HOA system. Suddenly, I was getting interview requests from 60 Minutes, Good Morning America, and even a documentary filmmaker from Netflix. They wanted to tell the story of how a quiet rancher with a drone exposed a multimillion-dollar land theft ring. But I wasn't doing it for fame. I was doing it for the people who'd been bullied into silence for too long. One morning, a woman showed up at my gate. She was in her 70s, small frame, silver hair tied in a scarf. She introduced herself as Margaret Tillman. "They took my garden," she said. "Fined me $500 for growing squash. Said it violated aesthetic continuity. I lost my house 2 months later. I invited her in, made her tea. She showed me photos of her old place. A modest bungalow, big vegetable patch in the back, a small handmade fountain in the front. That squash patch fed my grandkids," she said. "Now it's a gravel lot for townhomes." I didn't have words, just rage. So I added Margaret to the lawsuit. And then I added 42 more residents who came forward in the following week. Each one had a story. A man fined for painting his fence the wrong shade of brown. A veteran harassed for putting up a flagpole. A widow forced out because her mailbox was 1 inch too tall. They didn't just want compensation. They wanted justice. And in court, we gave them a voice. Karen's lawyer tried to argue that she was being scapegoated, unfairly targeted by the media, he said. But then we played the final piece of evidence. A voice recording of Karen laughing at a board meeting. "Once we clear out the Parker Ranch, the rest of those yokels will fall like dominoes." The courtroom was dead silent. Even the judge looked sick. He slammed the gavel. "The court finds the defendants guilty of conspiracy, abuse of power, illegal surveillance, and intentional emotional harm." The ruling. Karen and the board were ordered to pay $8.2 million in damages. The Willow Hills HOA was dissolved permanently. All board members were banned from forming or joining any HOA for life. And best of all, I was granted full immunity from any HOA involvement, forever, for as long as I lived on my ranch. When I stepped out of the courtroom, people were cheering. Not reporters, just regular folks, neighbors, strangers. One man hugged me and said, "You didn't just save your ranch, you saved ours too." And for the first time in months, I felt peace. But the final twist came a week later. I was repairing my barn roof when a black SUV pulled into the driveway. Out stepped a sharply dressed woman with dark glasses and a briefcase. She introduced herself as Marla Jennings, VP of Acquisitions at a national land trust. "We've followed your case closely," she said, "and we want to offer a deal. We'll help you turn your ranch into a historical landmark and conservation site, protected from all future development. Public tours, school visits, the whole 9 yards." I raised an eyebrow. Why? Because people need to know what happened here, what you fought for, what it means to protect the land and your rights. I looked around at the wide fields, the rebuilt fence, Max lying under the porch. And I said, let's do it. The ranch wasn't just a ranch anymore. It was a symbol of standing up, of fighting back, of never letting anyone, not even a Karen with a bulldozer, take what you love without a fight.